over the past 30 years, the story of HIV has changed from fear and silence to strength, resilience, and hope. Today, thanks to progress in treatment and care, people living with HIV can lead long, healthy, and meaningful lives. But behind the success are real stories of courage, community, and ongoing challenges that still need our attention. In Ontario, African, Caribbean, and Black communities continue to be disproportionately affected by HIV. Stigma, misinformation, and systemic barriers often stand in the way of testing, treatment, and care. Yet, through it all, our communities rise, supporting each other, breaking myths, and building paths towards healing and empowerment. This year, under the theme Overcoming Disruption, Transforming the AIDS Response, we honor those living with and affected by HIV, their voices, their journeys, and their unwavering determination to live, love, and thrive.
So I got diagnosed in February of 1990. There was only one, maybe two drugs then, and they were super, super toxic. And I don't know, somehow immediately I made a decision that I want quality over quantity.
We want to hear people's stories, and yes, stories are powerful for sure. It is a fact, right, that Black, racialized, Indigenous communities, and here we're talking about African, Caribbean, and Black communities, have not been treated well by a healthcare system. In fact, people have died at the hands of that very system. And again, that draws me back to why AIDS service organizations, frontline organizations that are led by Black folks, that are employ Black folks, where case managers and all the way from top to bottom reflect back community, that immediate trust is built.
I have been asked before what is the hardest part about having HIV, and for me, it's other people's reactions to my HIV. I've learned that it's not a death sentence. I've learned that it's manageable. I've learned that medications and community supports exist. If I was completely rejected by the community in which I live and play, then I was really scared of that happening. And before I was diagnosed, I have to admit that I was stigmatic as well. I was afraid of it and I didn't want to catch it. And if somebody living with HIV approached me, I would probably not reciprocate.
Yeah, so we see that despite our innovations and despite how far we've advanced in treatments, unfortunately there still does exist, gaps in care, especially with certain communities, which include Caribbean, African, and Black communities. We know that because of issues like racism in healthcare and beyond, because of stigma, because of various other barriers, unfortunately, a lot of our patients either have diagnosis gaps or maybe a longer time until they actually receive an HIV diagnosis. So there can be a lot of other concerns and issues that come in terms of actually being able to access and adhere to treatments.
Imagine this, still early 90s, and the volunteers were literally meeting somebody living with HIV and saying it. I find the more you talk about it, it lessens the stigma. And I did that in the hopes that others would see. I think it's more damaging to carry it. Yeah? Get it out. And the more I got it out, just the more comfortable I became in my skin.
There was a lot of self-blame at the beginning. I didn't want to be touched, I didn't want to be hugged, and so I didn't think that I deserved compassion or comforting or love from anybody. It took me a while before I would sleep in the same bed as my partner. It was definitely a process of accepting for myself and educating myself as well.
I know you may be experiencing a lot of confusing emotions. You may be feeling shock, You might be feeling fear, but I want to reassure you, that once you engage in care, meeting the right provider that you feel comfortable with, and starting treatment, we see that adherence to treatment will lead to excellent results.
On World AIDS Day, we need to applaud the work that's being done by ASOs, community members, and policymakers, because again, we're all working together, and understand that without a good, solid response that's culturally responsive, that's safe, that's non-judgmental and stigma-free, really that's the only way we'll move the needle to ensure that ACB communities are feeling supported.
For decades, HIV tried to silence voices in our community, but we are still here, living, thriving, and proving that HIV does not define who we are. The ACB community in Ontario continues to rise, guided by hope, supported by care, and connected by love. This is our story. This is our strength.